Tashidelek, Donald Trump has been elected the 47th President of the United States, securing the majority vote in this year's election against Democratic candidate Vice President Kamala Harris. This marks President Trump's second term in the White House, and reactions across the U.S. are mixed. While some Americans support his policies and leadership, others remain skeptical of his presidency. Notably, many Tibetan Americans participated in this election as the U.S. government's support for the Tibetan people and their cause has traditionally been bipartisan. However, Trump's stance on Tibet remains somewhat unclear. Let's explore President Trump's perspective on Tibet in more detail with Tsultim Gyatso, the Chinese liaison officer at Office of Tibet, Washington, D.C. in the United States. Welcome to our program, Tsultimla.
Thank you for having me.
So let me ask this straight away. What do you think about recent victory of Donald Trump in the U.S. election and its implication on the U.S. Tibet policy? What do you make of it?
So we have gone through a periodic election interval since we are in a democratic system here in the United States. President-elect Donald Trump had the victory in the election, and he will be coming back to the White House and lead the administration. We know that His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Sikkim Embassy have extended congratulate regards to his victory. Besides U.S. presidential election, U.S. congressional members have also gone through the recent election, and all of the congressional, the House members of the House and 1/3 of the Senate had to run their campaigns. So when you look at the election result in Congress, most of the congressional members who supported Tibet, those who have sponsored and co-sponsored bills on Tibet, those who have visited Dharamsala in the delegation, congressional delegation to Dharamsala, have been able to secure their re-election in this election. So when it comes to United States and U.S. Tibet policy, that I think that we are really fortunate to have a leader like His Holiness Dalai Lama, because of him that we have a strong congressional support that has always been bipartisan. So with that support, we were able to accomplish bills on Tibet that were signed into law. And I believe that overall U.S. Tibet policy will keep in a trajectory that will be aligned with the mandates that were included in the language signed into law by the previous administration. So one of the mandates is the appointment of the special coordinator for the Tibetan issue. So Office of U.S. Special Coordinator for the Tibetan issue will make a huge difference in our movement. And I think this is something that we will have to wait and see who will get in that position when the next administration comes.
And in what possible ways the Tibetan advocacy can be redirected or strengthened with the new U.S. administration in power?
So now, under the leadership of Central Tibetan Administration, so Office of Tibet, Washington, D.C., and International Campaign for Tibet have been working together to seek support from United States government, from the administration and the Congress. So as I mentioned earlier, there are mandates in the Tibet-related U.S. laws, and there's no doubt that Office of Tibet and ICT will do the needful to ask the upcoming administration to implement those mandates accordingly. But I believe that Tibetan communities in the United States will be having a huge potential here. So the Tibetan communities will be involved in the advocacy work in the same way it was carried in the past. We do have a strong Tibetan communities in the United States, as I mentioned, and they are really effectively functioning to elevate the Tibetan freedom movement. In that sense, if we take an example of the Resolve Tibet Act, we have collectively done a tremendous job to get the support from congressional members and eventually have the bill unanimously passed in the Congress. So this spirit of a collective effort, I think it should be maintained in the future, and in terms of trying to gain support from the American people and the government. And I'm sure that the resistance by the Tibetan people will be continued until we see resolve Tibet. And until then, the advocacy work will keep going. But then we should also recognize that as a Tibetan Americans, that we have a huge potential to make influence in the Tibetan advocacy work. It's important here in the United States to know that your district local congressional members and find ways to connect and share your concerns on the Tibet issue. We have seen that in the past that small communities with only few families have the ability to let the congressional members or the lawmakers know about Tibet and having some effective support on Tibet issues.
What kind of new opportunities or threats can we expect with regards to Tibetan advocacy movement in the US? How can we gear up for the opportunities and challenges?
Sure. So we have a strong congressional bipartisan consensus on Tibet, and I think it's important to keep that and maintain that bipartisan support. We have seen the cabinet nominees by the new administration also. So Senator Marco Rubio, he was actually nominated as the Secretary of the State. And he is someone that is a strong supporter of Tibetan issue and Uyghur issue as well. So some of the recent bills on Tibet was actually co-sponsored by him. And another thing that he did for Tibet specifically is that in 2021 that Senator Rubio and Senator Leahy, they actually sent a joint letter to the State Department calling out that the State Department should not use the language to state that Tibet is part of China. So someone like him coming to that position, I think will be helpful to the Tibetan cause. But then I think even at least that because of having him there, we don't have to in the State Department, we don't have to start again to introduce the Tibetan issue to him. However, I think that it's important to know that any country in this world, they will put their national interests at priority, and no country will sacrifice their national interests over Tibet. And I think that in terms of United States, the U.S. national interests, when it aligns with what we are struggling with, then we will see more opportunities. And then when the national interest actually alters in a different direction, then what we are asking for our cause, we will see more challenges. So in the future, I think we will have to wait and see what opportunities or challenges will come over when the new administration get into action after the transition.
And what kind of U.S.-China policy is expected under Trump's presidency this time around?
Sure. So U.S.-China policy is the hot topic that all the think tanks, all the researchers, all the Chinese scholars, and even our experts, Tibetan experts, are talking about these days. And there are increasing concerns on military politics and many other factors that that influence U.S.-China policy. But I believe the economy was the main focus that shaped U.S.-China policy for the past few decades, especially during the past two or the recent two administrations. So we have heard so much about the trade war, adding tariffs, decoupling, and the de-risking strategy by U.S. In terms of U.S. and China relationship. But looking at China, China is actually going through an economic downturn right now, and we can hear a lot of things about slumping the real estate market and the high local government debt, also the high youth unemployment rate. So these are some of the structural issues that China won't be able to solve within a short time or period. So I think that China is not going to get in a position to challenge United States, although they want to. Instead, I think they will try to make deals to ease their way to dealing with the United States. On the U.S. side, I believe that the cabinet nominees, as I mentioned earlier, not only Senator Michael Rubio, but there are other nominees who are actually strong critics on China. And in case of Senator Marco Rubio, he is someone that was sanctioned by China. So with cabinet nominees like him, I think there will be a much more stronger pressure on China from the United States. But there are other commentators actually expecting or projecting that China will use American business investors in China to get deals done with the new administration. So for us in the future, I think we will have to see what possible opportunities could be arise from the new developments.
So, Sulimla, before I sign off with this conversation, I'd like to ask, do you have any additional information that you'd like to add or any final thoughts?
So for us, as I mentioned earlier, that we are really fortunate to have a leader like His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So the congressional support that we are receiving from the United States is always bipartisan, and Office of Tibet and ICT under the leadership of CTA is always trying to maintain that way. And what's important for us, I think, is the Tibetan people to carry forward what we have done in the past, regardless of what change is going to happen in the future. So if there are opportunities arise, then we have to use those opportunities and bring Tibet on the map. At the same time, if the things are in the future, if the policies do alter in a different direction, then we gotta face the challenge and do the things we have done in the past, also to carry forward the Tibetan movement. So that could be my final call for all Tibetans out there, especially those who are in the United States, to pay attention to what builds up in the next 4 years, and then use your constituency right to bring Tibetan issue forward.
So, thank you, Sulimla. Thank you for joining us from Washington to talk to us about the U.S. election and the new president, 47 President Trump's administration on Tibet. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vandana, for having me and giving me this opportunity to discuss this matter. Thank you.
So with this, we have come to the end of today's program of In Conversation with Tibet TV. Thank you so much for watching.